Hi, welcome back to The Face of Space. This is a podcast dedicated to exploring the galaxy, talking to new life forms, and finding out the tools and skills that they use to make decisions, manage their emotions, and learn how to get along. I am your host, Miss Alyssa, and last week I visited a planet called Kepler 1649c to find out how they manage and identify their emotions. And it turns out they do it just like us. But managing your emotions can be very hard sometimes when you're talking to another life form. And so now I'm going to see how the creatures on this planet practice the skill we call effective communication. Right now I am parked outside of a new planet entirely made of water. Join me as I put on my suit. Now this probably isn't the suit that you were expecting. That is because I'm actually headed down to a submarine where I'm going to interview Jimmy. Jimmy is a jellyfish. He is located on the planet GJ1214b, and there is a lot of water on this planet. So, phew, it is quite a bit drier in here, that is for sure. But now I can see Jimmy. Jimmy, hi. Hi, nice to meet you. Oh wow, you human beings are so strange looking. Yes we are. So Jimmy, I'm here because on my planet Earth, sometimes people don't get along. Sometimes they don't communicate well. I was wondering, is it the same on your planet? I mean, most of the time people get along, most of the time, but yeah, sometimes people don't get along. Sometimes we have big jelly fights. So it sounds like maybe all life forms have trouble getting along sometimes, and I think that's because they don't effectively communicate, which means, during a conversation when one person says something, another person says another thing, and they hear each other and they listen. And there's a lot of ways that we communicate on Earth. Like we don't just talk, we also write things, and we also communicate through words, and we also communicate through emailing. So there's a lot of different things that we do. Yeah. We must be effectively communicating right now because you're saying one thing and I listened, and then I'm saying something now and it looks like you're listening because you're looking at me. Yeah, exactly. And there's a difference between talking and communicating. For instance, you could send a message to me by saying something, but if I don't hear you, then we didn't communicate very well. So that's one way people communicate. But there's also nonverbal communication. Do you know what that is? Is that like when I bob up and down and use my tentacles to wave and let people know I'm happy? Yeah, only us humans, we don't have tentacles. I mean, we use our arms, we use our bodies. It's called body language. We also might use other things some people use a language that is made of words, but you don't hear it, and we call it sign language. Yeah. But what about, okay, yesterday I was talking to someone, and then things started to get really, really loud, and I really wondered if they were bad, but I couldn't tell for sure, but their voice sounded really bad, and they were stomping their tentacles, but I couldn't tell. But what's that? Well, it sounds like what you were doing was using a skill that we use to communicate, which we call listening to someone's tone of voice, and that's part of nonverbal communication. There's many ways in which we communicate. Sometimes you can tell just by the way someone's talking. They might go like this. When I do that, what do I sound like I might be feeling to you? Well, your voice sounded kind of shaky, and you got a little bit quieter, but I couldn't really tell. But then I kind of saw your face too, and then I thought maybe you looked a little scared or nervous. Exactly, yes. That's a tool and a skill that we have. Sometimes we forget to pay attention to it, but when we do, and we think about these nonverbal or verbal things that we're doing when we're talking to someone, that can help us communicate better. There are actually 3 ways on earth that we use to communicate, which I think of like this: passive, assertive, and aggressive communication. Sometimes there are people, or I'm wondering, have you ever noticed jellyfish that maybe sometimes seem to talk or speak or communicate in a certain way a lot of the time, and it doesn't seem to be very helpful for them?
Well, I do have a friend, and she's really quiet, and sometimes I can't hear her, and then I ask her what she said, and then she just says never mind, and sometimes that's hard.
Yes, and I would call that passive communication. Passive communicators, they use a soft and shaky voice quite often. Maybe their tone makes them seem a little like they're unsure of themselves, and that can be really hard to talk to someone that is having that problem. So that's something we need to work on sometimes. An assertive communicator is someone who does all the things that help communicate better. Things like, making sure that you're giving eye contact and using a nice, kind tone of voice, and really making sure that you're looking at the person you're talking to. An aggressive communicator, that can be a very difficult one too. That's when you hear someone that's, quite often using a loud or bossy tone of voice. It kind of makes the person that's listening feel like they're not caring about their feelings, and that can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah. Sometimes I hear one jellyfish say one thing in kind of an aggressive way, I guess. Like they sound kind of mean, and they say something really loud and bossy, and then another jellyfish says something back, but they say it louder and meaner, and then another jellyfish sometimes says it louder and meaner, and then all of a sudden it seems like everybody's yelling, but nobody's listening.
Yes, that is what can happen when a lot of people are yelling and nobody's listening, and a lot of feelings are being hurt. That can happen sometimes for us too, but luckily it doesn't happen too often. And usually there are things that we can do when people aren't getting along. We can communicate well. We can say, hey, you guys, let's do something else. Let's listen, and in a very nice way, remind our friends that we like it when they talk to us in a nice way.
Yeah, people get along most of the time, but sometimes I wonder what I could do when someone is being mean, and I don't exactly know what to say.
Yes, that can be hard to do sometimes, especially if the person is not being mean, or they are being mean and they're not listening. That's why assertive communication can help us, like thinking about these things, like, just making sure you're saying things when you do say them in a nice tone of voice. And it's not exactly the things that you say to them, but it's the way you say it. So you don't even sometimes have to say anything at all. Just a reminder is that no matter what, to keep yourself assertive by doing things like, standing up, smiling, looking straight at them, and making sure you're not speaking very loud, or too quiet. There's a lot. It's not exactly something you have to say all the time. And if someone's being really mean and talking really loud, and you tried, then you know what? Sometimes you can walk away, and that can be helpful.
Well, I can't walk away, because I swim. But I could do all those other things, yeah. Yeah, there are lots of things I could probably do, yep.
Oh yes, I apologize for that. Yes, you'd have to swim away. But anyways, what I was saying to you before was that, when it comes to how you communicate in assertive communication, look for the people that are treating you nice and communicating with you in a nice way, and you can, see these people because they seem to respect themselves and respect others. You'll see the style because, it'll be easier to talk to them, and, it'll make you feel confident, and also, feel like you're being respected and giving respect.
Okay, I will look for those kind of people jellyfish.
Yes, well, Jimmy, I am so glad that I got to visit your planet. And you know, it seems like maybe all life forms sometimes have problems when it comes to effective communication, and we all have to use tools to learn how to get along. I am glad to know that it sounds like on your planet, even when there are things that are not working out well, it does sound like you also, most of the time, are using the tools that people use to help them understand one another. Jimmy, I'm so glad that I got to visit, and I am actually about ready to go to another planet right now, my home planet of Earth, and I hope that you'll be watching my podcast and you'll see where I go next.
Oh, I definitely will. Bye-bye!
Alright, well, I am suited up and ready to go to rest up home before my next big adventure. I want to thank you all so much for joining me on The Face of Space. You know, this is a podcast that shows you how, well, really the face of everyone in space is finding out how to live together and actually to get along in this really big place we all live. Alright, I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye!